Greetings and welcome to Potentials. This is Lija, and today we have Ed Kuberski, and he's going to be sharing his information on electrogravitics and the Hovercar. So thank you, Ed, for coming on. I really appreciate it. This is your first podcast, and I'm really thankful that you're choosing to do it here with me. I appreciate it. Reveal your information.
Thank you, Lija. It's an honor to be with you today, actually, to do this presentation. This presentation was done a few weeks ago at Worcester State University. And again, that was the first time it's ever been done in a university. So this is probably the first time that people will actually be seeing this. So it's an honor to be here. I'll talk to you a little bit today about some of my background before we go into the actual Hovercar and all that technology. When I was 12 years old, I was physically beamed aboard a starship. And I can never forget the feeling of my body tingling and being taken apart as I was beamed up. There was a really bright light. And then there was just an incredible amount of energy, something that is almost indescribable. I did an Akashic reading with my friend Rebecca Rose a couple of days ago, and we went back and sort of checked this out a little bit more. And she was saying that it's something that you would never, a feeling that you would never even feel on Earth, essentially, because her being intuitive, she actually felt what I felt when I was up there when I was 12. Another thing that came out of the reading was, so what happened was my heart had stopped. I was really sick, and that was the reason why I was beamed aboard, essentially. And I can remember hovering or levitating, not hovering, but levitating heart to heart with an extraterrestrial. And there was a conversation there. And I do remember the conversation, and it was like, it went sort of like this. He said, "You don't have to go back." And I said, no, I want to go back. I want to finish my mission. So then I was physically beamed back down, and I walked out into the kitchen where I was staying at my grandma's place, and my father was there, and they picked me up and they took me to the hospital, and I wasn't actually expected to survive the night. I had double pneumonia, essentially. Both my lungs were full of fluid. Plus, Rebecca had revealed with that Akashic reading a couple of days ago that my heart had actually stopped at that very moment that they beamed me up. So they essentially saved my life at that point. And I've never been the same since. I've always been a little bit different. I'll go into a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. I'm an advanced propulsion expert. So what does that mean? Advanced propulsion is actually a new theory of flight. And we haven't had a new theory of flight for probably over 100 years now, right? So it's kind of a neat thing to be coming along.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm so happy to bring it to all your listeners as well here, because truly what you guys are going to hear today is something that's going to be within your future within the next decade. Like this awesome. Is within the next 10 years, essentially. Yeah. So I'll go into my background a little bit. I have an honors diploma in mechanical engineering technology. And what is that? Mechanical engineering technologists are people that actually take designs right from conception to building the prototype to actually having it, work in the end. So essentially that's what kind of our job is to take these technologies and actually make them work and build the prototypes. And back in the day when I took engineering, I had a friend of mine who built a helicopter kit. And it was from parts, like it was boxes that came in, and you physically had to build the whole thing, had to weld it up, build the whole machine. And so my thing has always been vertical takeoff and landing, which is VTOL, so VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing. And this new theory of electrogravitics, the Hovercar is going to use this technology essentially. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. My background is theoretical physics and sound research. That's sort of what I've done for the last quite a long time. Also, I do high voltage tube electronics and build speakers, sound rooms, all kinds of electronics and things like that. So I'm
Awesome.
really happy today to bring you this presentation on the Hovercar from Stevati Aerospace. So we'll kind of dive into that now.
Okay. We'll bring that up.
Yeah. And what I'll do is I'll talk a little bit more about my background and my interest in vertical takeoff and landing machines, essentially. And we can kind of go from there.
Okay. Can you see this?
Yes, I can. Perfect.
Great.
All right. So I have a deep military background with my friends and family. I was in the Canadian Navy for a short time, and on the wall behind me, there's an honorary Space Force emblem that my military friend sent me a couple of years ago. So I still actually have a couple members of the family that are friends and family that are active military, and one is young George, who just became a Marine, and another one is an active pilot that is really, really, really high ranked. So in later podcasts, we'll talk a little bit more about them. But today we're going to talk about my father. My father was in the Cuban Missile Crisis back in the day, and he was a radar guy on the DEW line, which was the Distance Early Warning line in the high Arctic. So what they were worried about was nuclear missiles coming over from Russia over the poles, over the North Pole. So they set something up, and I think it was 1958 when it first started, something called NORAD. And NORAD is essentially our nuclear missile defense system for North America. So my father was involved with NORAD, and in this picture here, you can see a dome in the picture. Now that's actually the headquarters of NORAD in the high north. So that picture came off the internet, but there's a picture in the lower, would be left-hand lower. There's a color picture there, and it's got that same dome in the picture, and I'll explain to you who took that picture and how they took it in the next slide. But my father, if you go from left to right, he's the first guy in the middle row. So that would be my father, and his name was Ed Kuberski as well. And he was in the Canadian Air Force back in the day. The other person that's in the picture there is my best friend. My best friend's name is Al, and that's his father at the lower part there, the color picture of the guy below the dome. And his father's name is Davis, and Davis was also in the Cuban Missile Crisis. Davis was in the American Air Force, and he was a fighter pilot. And over the Bay of Pigs during the Cuban Missile Crisis, he was actually shot down and captured and then traded back. So he's had a pretty interesting life. He was also a test pilot in Nevada as well back in the day. So that's my best friend's father there. Yeah, we can go on to the next picture or the next slide, please.
All right. Let's see. How do I get back there? Okay.
So I talked a little bit about my best friend, and this next slide will
Can you see it?
no, actually I can't.
Okay. All right. Let's get back in. Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, so the next picture will be my best friend Al, who that's his father in the lower.
Yeah, I'm gonna get. I have to go back in and out every time, I guess.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. I love that chart you have on the wall behind you there.
Thank you. Can you see this one?
Yep, yep,
Okay.
perfect, perfect. Okay, so this is actually my best friend Al. He's a helicopter pilot, and Al actually, when he was young, that's what all these pictures are here. Al actually flew for the legendary Aero Arctic out of Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, Canada, and he essentially did a lot of adventures up north. And the one picture that's in the lower right-hand corner is him standing beside a helicopter that's on floats. Now, they use floats because if they go down in the high Arctic and they're over water, they need to have floats on. So that's kind of a safety thing. But that picture was actually taken at the same time that the NORAD dome color picture from the first slide was. Essentially, what he did is he landed his helicopter, that helicopter, as close as he could to NORAD headquarters without getting arrested, and took that picture so that we've got it to share with you guys. So this is my best friend Al. He has over 20,000 hours in a helicopter, and he's retired now. And he was a military helicopter pilot in his later life, and even flew with night vision and whatnot. So my fascination in helicopters has kind of led into what we're going to go into more as we go more into the presentation and talk more about the Hovercar. Yeah, so I think we can go on to the next one.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So this one will be still talking about my best friend Al, the helicopter pilot. We're just going to show you something really cool that he did
I'm
while he
gonna
was
see
up
if I
north.
can. I hope this is the right one. It's kind of hard to tell on my phone, but
Yeah,
no, that's not it.
no,
Sorry.
it's
That was a different one.
split the territories apart.
Yeah,
Looks like,
yeah.
yeah,
I know it's to split the territories apart, but I'm just trying to find it in the file because I couldn't put them in order, unfortunately.
right, yeah.
Um,
And that's my fault because I sent them in the wrong order to you. Sorry.
oh no, it's not. Is this it? Yes.
Yep, you betcha. So this is a really interesting story. They in 1999, you can see this is just a Google search. Um, they split the Northwest Territories into two pieces, and one of them was just called the Northwest Territories, but the other part was called Nunavut. So essentially, Canada got a new territory called Nunavut. And what happened was Al he was flying the helicopter, one of those Air Arctic helicopters, like in the pictures, and he had a big giant GPS box, he said, right beside him in the helicopter. But he also had two scientists in the back of the helicopter, and the scientists told him, using the GPS box where uh, they wanted him to fly. And the flight that they took that day is actually on the maps of all the worlds now. They essentially split the territories into two that day. So I just wanted to kind of tell you guys about that because it's kind of a neat thing that was done up north
That's cool.
with the best friend. Yeah.
All right. Next one is the
Yeah. Now we're
this is the Nazi craft with
yeah
men.
yeah. So now we're
Yes.
going to dive into some of the actual technologies that are going to be used in the Hovercar, and they're actually not new technologies. This picture is out of one of Dr. Sala's books, I believe, or maybe it's William Tompkins' book. Dr. Sala, I know Dr. Sala, so he gave me permission to use all of his pictures and information, and same with Dr. Robert Wood. He's the main editor of Tompkins' books, and I know him as well. So I think this picture is actually out of Tompkins' book. And this is a picture that was taken during World War II of, there's four German officers standing beside what's called the Hannibal spacecraft. And there was different versions of this. So the Germans did have flying craft back in World War II, and this is proof of it. And there's lots and lots of other proof out there as well too. But this is the technology that is going to be used in the Hovercar. And the reason I'm showing this to you today is because if we can go to the next one, I'll start talking about a few more of my friends. Oh, and the other things I can say about the Hanabu is the Hanabu 3, which isn't that craft, but is a larger craft. It could reach speeds of 25,000 miles per hour. And that's significant because I think we need, I think 17,500 to get out of our atmosphere. So Dr. Sala, I think it's in Tompkins' books or one of Dr. Sala's book. He talks about how the Germans were actually on the moon in 1947. So they've been there for a really long time, and they use that technology to get there, which is the technology that we're going to talk about a little bit today. Now, this is a picture of my dear friend Carmen Miller. Carmen and I met Carmen when I was 16, and we went to high school together in Penticton, British Columbia, Canada. And Carmen's father, who we're going to talk about a little bit more, her father was a brilliant, brilliant man. And her father actually was in the Hitler Youth during World War II. Now, I mean, it wasn't by his, he didn't want to be there. And of course, after the war, he totally got away from all that. But he did actually see technologies. And he did see something called the Nazi bell, which is something that we're going to get into a little bit more in the next couple slide presentations. But I just wanted to introduce you to Carmen because the machine that was in that picture is, yeah, we can go back to that just a little bit again. The machine that's in the picture with her is it's called a magnetic over unity motor generator. And it was something that her father designed and constructed back in the 80s. And I knew her father well. He was brilliant. And I used to go up and spend hours and hours and hours talking about high physics and things with him. But this actual machine, this machine that you see in the pictures, on my 50th birthday party, which was a bunch of years ago, I flew down to Penticton and we had a big party there for me with all my friends. And Carmen was there. So I asked her, I said, so when was the last time you fired up your dad's machine? And she said, well, it's been like a decade. And I said, well, Carmen, I'm here right now. Why don't we do that? So the next night we went over to her house with about maybe a dozen people, and we actually fired up that exact machine. Now, when that machine is fully operational and running, it produces more power than it consumes. So essentially, it's a generator that self-runs and will run itself. So it's and this is something from the 80s. So I was into free energy and anti-gravity technology right from high school, essentially. Yeah. So we'll go on to the next one, and this one is.
Yep.
Yes. So this one coming up, this picture is actually Bill Mueller, Carmen's father. And this is one of the machines that he built really early on. I don't actually ever remember seeing that particular machine. So he probably would have been working on that just around when we were in high school or maybe shortly after high school. But this is Bill Mueller, who actually saw the Nazi flying bell or the Nazi flying craft. So we actually have someone that I personally knew very well who witnessed these technologies back during World War II, essentially. So this is something that was covered up for a really, really long time. And just recently, in 2019, the Navy released something called the Pius patents, where a lot of this technology is starting to be released and come out. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit more about. So if we go to the next one, it'll be, it should be
Bell. Okay, the Bell one.
the bell. Yeah. So this is what he saw. Now this is just the artist's rendition of it, but there is an actual movie on the internet with this thing with big giant chains on it, and it's flying around like wildly, almost out of control practically. And it's chained up to something called the henge. And the henge is a big concrete structure that they built to tether this thing down so it didn't take off and disappear. Now, there's a couple things about this. The technology that's used in this is actually true anti-gravity, where you have torsional fields that operate and counter, they operate counter or against themselves. So the technology that we're going to be talking about today is actually not this exact same technology. This technology of the bell is actually something that if you sort of push the technology, you get into time travel and teleportation. So the technology that we're going to talk to you today about with anti-gravity and the Hovercar is not this technology, but is similar because they still float essentially. They hover essentially. Yeah. So then we'll go on to the next one, and the next one is really cool because this is.
I'm trying to remember what it looks like.
Oh, it should be Paul. Paul. The picture of
Yes.
Paul. Yeah.
Oh, a picture of him, right. Okay, it's
Yeah.
hard to see these pictures.
Yeah. They're
Is him?
small.
Yeah,
Hey.
there it is. There it is. Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
his head was cut off in the picture, so I found it. But yeah, it is.
Yeah. So this is Paul Laviolette, and I had the honor of having contact with him a couple times before he passed away. He passed away December 19th of 2022. So it was fairly recently. And I'll tell you a little bit more about him, and then I'll tell you something very special that happened to me that relates to Paul. So Paul was an astrophysicist. He looked at the very large planets and the universe itself. But Paul was also a quantum physicist. So Paul did both. He did the very, very large and the very, very small. And Paul literally was a genius. Uh, Essentially, what Paul did is he came up with something called subquantum kinetics. And people always ask me, well, what does that mean? Well, people have heard of the quantum level. Subquantum means below the quantum level. So Paul asked a really, really, really interesting question. He said, what makes up the quantum? What actually are the building blocks of the universe that make up the quantum that make up everything else in our universe? So he essentially started right from the building blocks. And so that's why it's called subquantum, so meaning below the quantum. And then the kinetics part at the end, kinetics just means moving. So in this case, subquantum kinetics is at the very, very, when you look at the very, very core structure of the building blocks of our universe, it's actually nothing but a wave. It's actually sound. Sound comprises everything in our universe, sound and frequencies. So this is really important. And Paul Laviolette, when I contacted him, I brought him some of the anti-gravity technology that I'm going to talk to you about with Stevati Aerospace. And it was really interesting because he had never really seen it, his concepts being used. And I think he saw this before his death. And the reason I know that is because recently I had the honor of being asked into the Starburst Foundation. And Starburst Foundation is something that Paul set up, and it's his foundation. And every Sunday for, it was every Sunday for the last 5 years before he passed away, he spent on Zoom calls with a handful of guys, like I think there's half a dozen guys that he spent time with. Well, I didn't get to spend time with him directly because he had passed away, but recently I had the honor of being asked into the Starburst Foundation as a new member. So I have the honor of saying that I'm a part of that. And now every Sunday, we have like 4-hour Zoom calls, and all we talk about is subquantum kinetics. And recently, I think it's next weekend, Brendan, who is the CEO of Starburst Foundation, and he's also an astrophysicist, he's going to be doing a presentation at APEC with Tim Ventura. And APEC is the Advanced Propulsion Engineering Conference. So it's where all the nerds like me go to talk about the technologies and anti-gravity, things like that. What I did is I released some study notes from Paul, and as we go into the presentation a little bit more, we'll talk a little bit more about that stuff. So yeah, I think if we go on to the next one, it should be the cover.
Yep.
Yeah, so what happened was on April 1st of 2021, I had actually sent a letter it was to Elena Denon first and then to Dr. Sala a couple of days later. And I had written 80 pages of handwritten notes about Paul Laviolette on, like it says here, Tesla, anti-gravity, and free energy. And these are just essentially my study notes from all of his work and whatnot. But I realized that perhaps I should be sharing this information with the world. So April 1st of 2021, I asked Dr. Sala and Elena Denon a question about releasing these papers. And in fact, I released them first to Elena Denon. She was the first person to actually get them. And then Dr. Sala a few days after that. And in the last couple of years, those papers have been released and sent to certain people all over the world, essentially. And it's just talks about the technology of how things actually work. Yeah, so, and one other thing too is subquantum kinetics predicts anti-gravity. It's part of what comes out of the predictions of subquantum kinetics. So that's also why we're talking to you about Paul Laviolette today. And the next one.
The next one is David Wilcock. Trying to remember what it looks like.
Yeah, it's the Zoom call.
Is this it? Yes. Is that it? Yes.
Yeah, you betcha.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, so this is pretty interesting. So what happened was this is October 30th of 2021, and this is a Zoom call that I had with David Wilcock. And David Wilcock, if anybody's ever watched Ancient Aliens, the show on History Channel, it's been on for, I don't know, 20 some odd years now. David Wilcock was the host of the show at the beginning for over 100 episodes. So he was on the show, and I think he actually still consults on the show to this very day. So this Zoom call was literally mind-blowing. I was on the Zoom call with David Wilcock when he told us they had bought Stevati Aerospace to produce hover cars with technology, with anti-gravity technology. So in other words, we're going to use a new theory of flight and build these hover cars. So this is the actual Zoom call from that day with him. There was a whole bunch of other people on the Zoom call as well, too, when he revealed all this to the world, essentially. And
All right, next one. It's an email. I think this is the email.
Yeah, it's the one with
Is that it?
no, it's the one with although you know what, we've got that one actually. So
Oh,
let's go with that one.
okay.
Yeah,
I'll go back.
yeah, let's go with that one because I didn't really talk too much about that one. And that
Fine.
this one's really interesting. Yeah, so this is the actual email that I sent to Dr. Sala on April 1st of 2021. And this is when I actually sent Dr. Sala the study notes from Paul Laviolette that I had sent to Elena Denon a few days before that. And I essentially said to Dr. Sala that here's my notes, and I wanted Elena Denon to ask her friend Thorhan Iridian if the world was ready for this information, essentially. So that's what this email says. And Dr. Sala came back, and I actually can't read it. Can you read it from there? The very top portion that Dr. Sala came back to me. Oh, okay, I can read it now. It says, so after I sent it to Dr. Sala, he said, thank you, Ed. Your notes are very helpful in better understanding Paul Laviolette's work on electrogravitics and explanation of Brown's theories. Aloha, Michael Sala. And then he says, the truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose, it will defend itself. And when I read that, I was like, okay, maybe we should start releasing these papers more. So this is sort of the beginning of these anti-gravity papers being spread out and released to certain people across the world, essentially. And Thorhan, for those that don't know, Thorhan was a fleet commander back in the day, but he's since had promotions now. But back in the day, he was a fleet commander, and he's a fleet commander with the Galactic Federation of Worlds. Elena Denon is the emissary for the Galactic Federation of Worlds, so her role is spokesperson between, essentially between Space Force and the Earth Alliance and the Galactic Federation. So she kind of talks about things that are going on out in the universe. So this one here is a posting that I did on David Wilcock's forum. The day after David Wilcock told us that he bought Stevati Aerospace to produce hovercars, I posted this on his forum, and oddly it ended up number 51, and we'll kind of go into why that's kind of strange in a few moments here. But essentially what this is saying is this is the theory of anti-gravity according to subquantum kinetics from Paul Laviolette. So I kind of go through it, and in just a real simple way of explaining it is what we do is we create in front of the spacecraft or aircraft or whatever we're trying to fly, we create what's called a well, or you can think of it as like a hole, just like a hole in front of the spacecraft. And what happens is the spacecraft naturally wants to fall into the hole. It wants to fall into the hole. So it falls into the hole. And as it does that, from behind, we push with another hill. So we have a well at the front, or a hole at the front of the spacecraft, and behind it we have a hill. And that hill pushes the spacecraft along into the hole, and this whole thing flies through the ether. And the best way, the most elegant way I can describe it is we swim them through the ether. So essentially it's just like swimming, where you're doing your strokes, and we swim them through the ether. So that's a really good explanation on so how it works and whatnot. So now this is what I'm so excited to show you guys.
Let me make sure I got it.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes. There it is. Awesome.
Yes. Oh no, that's the, hang on. Go it's the one with, that's not the picture, it's the drawing
Of the drawing.
of the
Oh, right.
hovercar. Yeah.
Yes, drawing,
Which,
not the photo. Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
we're
I
going to
thought
go
that
into
was,
that one, yeah, a little bit more later.
I was getting ahead of myself.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no
Sorry.
problem.
There you go. Drawing.
Yes, so this is actually the Hovercar. This is something that Chris Beskar, who is the CEO of Stevati Aerospace, designed a really long time ago, I understand. If you look closely at the wings, there's lines down the wings of this Hovercar. And the reason why they're there is because the wings will fold up so that the Hovercar will fit into a garage, just like a car, essentially. It will hold four people, so it's a four-seater. It will fly to 2,500 feet, and if you want to go higher than that, you'll have to get a pilot's license because that's like an FAA rule. So it will do that. It will fly 250 miles an hour. It will be programmable, so you can just enter coordinates in, and it'll fly you there. Essentially, you don't have to do anything. The other thing that's really important to know about the Hovercar is it will have an onboard power supply that will never need to be plugged in, ever. And in fact, there'll be enough excess power if, let's say, you wanted to go, and I don't know why you would want to do this, but if you wanted to go maybe do some camping and take your big screen TV with you in your Hovercar, you would actually have power to plug it into, essentially. Andrea, the lady from the university, asked how many Hales of Bay would fit in it. And I laughed and I said, well, I think maybe 8, because like it's 2 bales per person, so you could probably put 8 bales of hay in there. And yes, you will never have to pay energy costs to operate this thing. It will have onboard power and never need to be powered up or charged or anything like that. And in fact, I live in a small cabin up near Alaska, and it'll have enough power to power up this whole cabin, essentially. So I could have my Hovercar parked outside, plugged into the cabin, and it would power up the cabin with no cost. So that's why we call it free energy. It's not really free because you have to buy all the technology to make it work. But once you do that, you're not going to have an electrical bill down the road. And what's going to happen with technology as we move along, Chris Beskar has said several times that we're going to have more energy than we know what to do with. And it's going to change the economy because most of the production costs of things, over half the production costs, like over 50% of the cost of building something, has to do with energy, whether it's actually building it or transporting it or cutting the trees down to have wood or whatever. You need energy. The moment you take energy out of the equation of an economy, now your economy, there's all kind of money freed up to do all kinds of things that we actually should be doing and not paying bills to banks for the rest of our life type of thing. So this is really going to change everything in the world. And this is 10 years away, you guys. We go to the next slide here. And this will be from Stevati Aerospace. Okay, it's coming up. Yes, so this posting, you guys, is actually from Twitter. I took it probably, I would say March or April. But if you guys go back into Stevati Aerospace's Twitter account and go back into this year, I know it was this year sometime, you will find this, and it literally says no fans, no rotors, no blades. So how does this thing fly? Well, it's going to use electrogravitics or anti-gravity technology, which is essentially sound. We use sound to fly these things, and that's why I'm kind of an expert also, because I'm an expert in sound and theoretical physics, so that's also part of it. And if we can you make that a little bit bigger? And I want to read the
I don't know which part you're.
Okay, okay, that's good right there. Oh, it's a little bit. Yeah.
Like,
So see, yeah, just go or yeah, go back because so I can see the SM2032 part. Yeah. So you guys, this SM2032, that is actually the model number for the Hovercar. So they've actually already got a model number for it, and they've actually got prototypes. They're working on prototypes right now. So I'll read to you what it says at the bottom. It says a 4-seat, zero emission VTOL, so that's vertical takeoff and landing, personal air vehicle now under development by Stevati Aerospace. And it has their address in Niagara Falls, New York. And that's where the prototyping facility is for Stevati Aerospace. So people have asked me, how do I know all of this information? So if we go on to the next one, yeah, I love that chart behind you.
the next one is Chris Biscar.
Yeah, you betcha.
I'm not sure if I can see it.
It's orange. It's
Oh,
orange.
that helps. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do I know all of this? Well, February 8th of this year, I live about 30 minutes out of town. And I was in town driving around one day and my phone rang and it was Dr. Deepak, who is the chief scientist at Stevati Aerospace. So Dr. Deepak and I talked for about half an hour. And then on the drive home, by the time I came home, this was actually on my phone. And this is a text from Chris Beskar, who's the CEO of Stevati Aerospace. And Chris Beskar is a genius aerospace engineer. He's the man that actually developed this technology at Area 51 a long, long time ago with a guy named Pete Peterson, a PhD Pete Peterson. And eventually Chris Beskar, I think in 1994, he started Stevati Aerospace. Chris Beskar is a really interesting character. I think it was in grade 10 in school, he won a contest for the best fighter design. Like he drew a really cool aircraft design and won the contest. And I think he had won a contest a few years before that, earlier in grade 8 or something like that as well. But by grade 10, the military was already starting to take interest in the young Chris Beskar because of what he had drawn. And in his, I think it was his first year of university, 1994, Chris Beskar started Stevati Aerospace. So it's been an organization that's been around for a really long time. And originally, when Chris Beskar was introduced to me and a bunch of other people, it was introduced by David Wilcock, the owner of Stevati Aerospace. He introduced him as the premier builder of spacecraft in the world. And at first it was like, wow, that's quite the statement. But it took me the better course of a year, at least, finding out about Stevati. And this was before this text and phone call and everything occurred too, to really realize the depth of what was truly going on with Stevati and some of the technologies that they had developed. An example of this is Chris Beskar is actually working on a replacement for the F-35 fighter right now. So he's actually working on a design that's going to replace the F-35 at this point is the pinnacle of our fighter design, and Chris Beskar is already working on a replacement for it. Chris Beskar also designed the helmet that is in the F-35 fighter, and it's actually consciousness technology. So these guys put this helmet on, and when they're doing their thing and they need to shoot a missile off, they don't even have to push a button or anything. All they need to do is think about it, and off it goes. So this is the type of technology that Chris Beskar is working with and has worked with for a very long time. And in later podcasts, we'll go into a little bit more about Chris Beskar, but we'll talk a little bit more about Pete Peterson because, and the story of how Stavati came to be, because it's very interesting. David Wilcock had a longtime insider at Area 51, like for a decade, at least for a decade, that he knew, and his name was PhD Pete Peterson. And Pete Peterson is a really interesting character because Pete Peterson was the grandson of Nikola Tesla's lab assistants. So Pete Peterson had all of Nikola Tesla's true technologies and knew what was really going on. And Pete Peterson worked for DARPA, which is Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. DARPA is the pinnacle of any kind of science with anything to do with the States, or even the world for that matter. DARPA is the pinnacle. And Chris Beskar, I believe Chris Beskar went to work for DARPA in grade 10, actually, is what I believe, but I'm not sure about that. But yeah, so he's a pretty interesting character. And it'll lead us into the chart that's right behind you there on the wall.
Yes, the Rockwell space chart.
Yeah, this is the Rockwell space chart, and I actually happen to know the man. I call him my friend now, especially after he took Andrea Martin, the researcher, the professor from the university where I did the presentation. I put Andrea and Frank Chili together, and Frank Chili literally took Andrea under his wing, and they're like the best of friends now, and there's all kinds of other cool stuff that we'll talk about in later podcasts happening as well too. So, but Frank Chili is the man that released the Rockwell space chart, this chart that's behind you on the wall. And what's so special about it is this chart was started by William Tompkins in 1952. And Frank Chili, Tompkins was asked on the radio, Jeff Rent's radio show over 20 times by Frank Chili. And Frank Chili is the executive producer of the Jeff Rent show. So what happened January 13th of this year was Frank Chili called me up because I talked to him a couple times before, and he asked me if, the first thing he asked me was, your father was part of NORAD? And I said, and then he said, a high officer? And I said, well, he was part of NORAD, but a high officer, I'm not sure because I don't know what his rank was. But so I was asked on the Jeff Rent show, and I actually talk about Stavati Aerospace, Electrogravitics, Elena Didon, Thor Han, and everyone on the show. So that was back in January. You can go check it out. But really, if you go back there and check it out, you want to go back there and check out William Tompkins' actual, things with Jeff Rent's as well too, right? Because there's some tremendous information there. And Tompkins designed that whole chart behind you. Everything that's on that chart is all his work. But Tompkins, and this chart is the chemical rocket program. This is a chart that NASA is still using, and SpaceX and companies like Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin, they're all using this still. Now, it's very interesting because I've got an email that we'll share with you next time from Dr. Sala, but I'll just let you know what it says. Dr. Sala says that everything on this chart has already been done. Everything has already been done on this chart. And what he's talking about is the secret space program. So there's something called the secret space program. Now the secret space program is just known as Space Force, essentially. When Space Force started, they sort of took over the secret space program. And the thing is that there's something called Solar Warden. And Solar Warden is actually the actual program of the secret space program. It's called Solar Warden. Well, here's the thing. William Tompkins not only designed that chart behind you, which is all of NASA and the whole space program, he also designed the complete secret space program as well. So next time we'll dive into Tompkins a lot more because I've had the pleasure of personally knowing 5 men that knew Tompkins personally. So I've had contact with 5 men that knew Tompkins personally, including Dr. Sala and Frank Chili, Jeff Rentz, and a couple more that we'll talk about next time. So it's a real special thing. So I think the last slide that we have there is, in fact,
The one that I tried to show earlier, right?
yeah, you were trying to let the secrets out too fast there.
I love this picture.
I
What can I
know,
say?
right? And so people will ask, where's the proof? Well, here's some proof right here. This is actual, I, I believe that this came from the French secret space program. So this is a Solar Warden craft that was built by France, because it's not only the States, the US that was part of the Solar Warden, there were a lot of other countries involved with this because it's a huge thing. This is an actual picture of one of the craft while it's being built. So it looks kind of like a submarine, but it's not. This is an actual spacecraft. And once you have anti-gravity technology, when you can literally take that thing and float it, you can literally take that thing and float it out to space. And that's the technology of the Hovercar that we're talking to you today about. So Solar Warden uses similar technology, although the technology that Solar Warden uses, especially this new technology, goes far, far beyond anything that I'm talking about now. Yeah, and it's stuff that we can dive into later down the road, sort of thing. So, yeah, I'm really happy to be able to bring you information on something that you guys are going to see in your near future. And Chris Beskar has said a couple times now that the Hovercar will be the price of a Honda sedan. So he doesn't want to make it expensive for everyone. He wants everyone to be able to afford it. So it's really going to change things as we move along here. And think about not having to put tires on your Hovercar or oil changes, or there's so many reasons why it is so much better, this technology, right?
It's about time. Yeah.
Yeah, they've they were trying to reveal this in the 60s, as a matter of fact. The end of the 50s into the 60s, and there was somebody called Otis Carr. Otis Carr is a really interesting character too, because I told you guys about Pete Peterson. Well, Pete Peterson was the grandson of Nikola Tesla's lab assistant, so he's connected to Tesla very closely. Otis Carr was Nikola Tesla's kind of like bellboy when he lived in the New Yorker hotel. Otis Carr would go up to Nikola Tesla every day and say, what would you like to? I'll get you newspaper and I'll get you some food, like to the grocery store kind of food. And he looked after them. And eventually Tesla, I guess he could trust him and brought him under his wing and taught him the technology. And they actually built something that we'll maybe dive into another time. But unfortunately, there are powers to be that shut it down big time. And we never saw it. Like we should have saw, I should have saw it as a kid.
Right.
I can remember the Jetsons. I don't know if you remember the
Oh,
Jetsons.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the Hovercar, right?
Right.
That's it right
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's so cool.
That
Yeah.
is. Thank you for showing us all of this.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, and like I said, in the next few podcasts, we'll dive into more of the technologies and really dive into that space chart that you have there behind you.
Yes.
That I'm very excited to talk to everyone about that as well, and all that. But my connection to that chart is I know the man that released it to the world, and that's Frank Chili, a man I love to call my friend. Yeah, he's the most amazing soul we ever met, actually. Yeah, truly. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
So
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I don't have too many questions because really I think you covered it all. Is there
okay.
anything else that you wanted to let us know, or to any more information that, I know we're going to have further podcasts, so I don't know how much more you want to put out
Yeah.
here.
I will say that I haven't watched it yet, but David Wilcock had a recent release of a video that somebody that I know told me about. And he said that there was, it's the same generator that's going to power up the Hovercar. They're going to make it a standalone, and so that you'll be able to take this generator and again plug it into this cabin and power up the cabin. And
Okay.
it's not going to be that expensive. I don't remember the exact cost because I haven't watched the video yet, but I do know about it because I actually have a lot of information on both these gentlemen, Chris Beskar and David Wilcock, with Stevati Aerospace, and some of the things that they're doing are truly amazing,
Yeah.
truly amazing. Yeah, they're literally inventing our future. Oh, the other thing I will say is that Donald Trump has been campaigning on something called Agenda 47.
Mm.
And part of Agenda 47 is building an air mobility transport industry. Now,
Wow.
literally, he is talking about Stevati Aerospace and the Hovercar. And you actually know, I've talked to you a little bit more about this in detail. So you know
Right.
a little bit more about the story of all that. But I will just say that when David Wilcock bought Stevati Aerospace, he had to have a direct meeting with Trump while he was president in October of 2020, while Trump was still president. So um, we might reveal a little bit more as we go along with all of that as well. But Agenda 47 is based on building a hovercar industry, not only for you guys, because I'm in Canada, but
Right.
also the whole world, essentially.
Yes. I was
And
wondering about that. Yeah.
yeah, and they don't want it to be, when something new comes out and it's super expensive because no one else can have it, kind of. They
Yes.
That's not going to happen. I guarantee that there's going to be enough of them that they are going to be sold at the price that he said, like, maybe 50 grand or whatever a Honda sedan is worth, these days. And this again will truly change the economy because now you've got a vehicle that you don't have to pay gas, you will have to insure it probably, but there's a lot of maintenance costs that won't be there.
Right.
It's really going to free up a lot of money for people that are really struggling right now because
Right.
of Bidenomics. I'm just going to say it, right? Yeah.
So
So
what about competition? Will there be other companies trying to do this? And
okay, this is a very interesting question. One of the gentlemen that's in Paul Violet's group with the Starburst Foundation, he actually works for a major car company in Detroit. Now, he hasn't said which one. I have a really good idea about it, and he's a very interesting character. He's an AI expert who writes AI programs that learn from AI programs. So his job is actually to look after all of the information that in the cloud that allows the cars to self-drive. So there is competition, like you say, because that's in Detroit. I won't say who it is because I'm not sure. I think I know who it is, but I won't say. So there is competition, and there is even a hover car recently that came out. I can't remember the name of the company, but it's not a true hover car because what it is it's like a drone. It's got propeller, like how it said no fans, no rotors, no blades.
yes.
Um, these have blades just like drones, and what it is it looks like a car because they've made a body around it like a car that's transparent to the air, essentially, right? The air can
Right.
flow through it, but it looks like a car. So
Hmm.
it's going to be maybe the first hover cars you're going to see, but it's not going to use anti-gravity technology.
Right.
That is not anti-gravity
Would
technology.
it have a vertical takeoff and land as well? Or would
Yes, yeah.
it would
There is. In fact, there's one. I'll send it to you in the next few days when I find it. But there's a version that came out of China that I've actually got a picture of,
mm,
and they've already had like 1,000 flights, already test
wow.
flights of it, right? As a matter of fact, I think maybe even within this year or next year, it will be operational in China. But again, it's got four propellers. Um,
Right.
right? It's one of
It's not
those.
anti-gravity, so
Yeah,
yeah.
it's not anti-gravity, but it is vertical takeoff and landing, and it will, yeah, it'll do VTOL, and it'll, do a lot of really cool things.
Mm,
And it's not going to have free energy on board either.
right, right.
You're,
That's what
you're,
really makes this stand out is the free energy.
yeah,
Also, I'm wondering how would this affect something like Tesla, the Tesla company, Elon Musk's Tesla.
no,
Um,
that's a good question, actually. Yeah, Tesla, I would imagine that he has plans somewhere down the road. It's kind of a funny thing because I've been on Twitter, or I was on Twitter. I got to get back on there. Elon kicked me off. Actually, we're going to have a talk about that, but with Elon when I get a chance. But yeah, it's pretty neat because it is coming along, essentially, the technology. But I think Elon's working on the chemical rocket program. Elon is working on what's behind you on the wall. He is still working on that, essentially. And on Twitter one day, it was a picture of Elon with his child, and it was something about teaching his child something, and I said, oh, it was teaching his child space engineering or something. And I commented back with, why don't you teach him electrogravitics?
yeah,
So, right.
exactly.
So,
Maybe he is, but he's just not saying.
yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, I was actually asked by someone if I wanted to talk to Elon because of the space chart that's behind you. Because I know the man that released the space chart, Frank Chile. One day somebody came along that knows Elon and said, hey, would you like to talk to him one day? And that's why I said maybe one day I will get a chance to ask him why he canceled my Twitter account,
Yeah.
sort of thing. But I mean, he's going to eventually move into this technology as well, for sure. The
Yeah.
whole world will.
I'm
And
actually surprised he's not at the forefront of it, but on the other hand, I'm not surprised because he's still in the other direction. So
yeah, well, that chart that's behind you, there's down the left-hand side of it, there's the dates, and the very bottom of the chart goes to the year 2100.
right,
And we're actually only about halfway through that chart. So Elon's
right.
got a lot more work to do
Yeah,
to get through that, because he's got all the government contracts and private contracts with the chemical rocket program. But once electrogravitics and this stuff comes on board, like I said, the real clue in the Hovercar is in the model number. It's SM2032. Now,
mm,
all of Chris Beskar's designs start with SM, which
right.
stands for Super Machadi, I think, or something like that. I can't remember, but they all start with that. But the 2032 is a big clue right
Yeah,
there, right?
yeah,
But hopefully sooner. I mean,
yeah,
this could happen a whole lot sooner. And if everything goes well with the elections, with your guys' elections coming up, I would say within a year after that, you're really going to start seeing stuff accelerating, essentially, and this stuff might even come faster. I do know they're working on building production of them sort of as we speak, actually, so that there's enough of them, or they're setting up their production to build those large quantities so that they can bring them out and everyone can have one, essentially. Yeah,
right.
and there are other things too. For example, I'm connected to the Russian space program quite a bit too, and I know of a place in Russia that is actually doing pretty much the same thing that Stevati Aerospace is doing in America, essentially. Maybe we can talk about that on a later podcast as well, because that will be a whole other deal. But yeah, so I'm kind of tapped into that because of a book that I was asked to have a look at, the English version of a book called New Aerospace Technologies. And it's written by Alexander Frolov. And Alexander Frolov is the former owner of the Faraday lab in St. Petersburg, Russia. So he's a major Russian scientist. And I agreed to do the book before the war started. And just a little while ago, I contacted Frolov, and we came to the conclusion that we're not going to do anything until the war's over, essentially. And then we're going to maybe go from there, essentially, with the book. But the book is a book on ether physics. And in fact, it's probably the best book ever written on ether physics in history, as a matter of fact. And I was asked to look at it because of some quantum kinetics. Carmen actually asked me to look at it, as a matter of fact, because Carmen knows Alexander Frolov personally. So she asked me to have a look at it, and my conclusion was that the physics that they were talking about in aerospace technologies, the ether physics from the Russians, was the same physics of subquantum kinetics, except that Paul, like I said, took it one level lower and said what makes up the quantum, and which is the subquantum, and the Russian book doesn't go to that level, essentially. But it definitely matches. So my thing was that it is something that definitely matches the theories of ether physics that come from Nikola Tesla himself. And when I had contact with Paul Laviolette before he passed away, I actually nicknamed him Tesla 2.0 because Paul literally took Tesla's work and finished it, in my opinion. And on another confirmation, if you read through Elena Danon's books and you read some of Thorhan's writings, Thorhan will say in there that, and I say it two different ways, all is sound and sound is all. I don't remember which way he says it, but I always say it both ways, because that's what is the true building blocks of our universe in our dimensions that we're in now. So it's pretty interesting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, thank you for your presentation and for giving us all this information. I do appreciate that, and for
You're
coming on my show.
welcome.
It's been an honor and a privilege to have you, and look forward to future podcasts with you and more information. And yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. I think it's awesome.
Definitely. Thank you. Yeah. So next time we'll talk about that chart that's right behind you on the wall
Yes.
there. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
Well,
We'll
thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you at the next podcast. And thank you, Ed. And ciao for now.
yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.